Well, I think the idea that vaccine scares are made up by the media is really something that itself is made up by people who are trying to sell books. And if you're writing books, the easiest thing to do is to find a bunch of newspaper cuttings and hold forth about what you found in them. No, vaccine scares are not created by the media. Although it is true that media exploits vaccine scares, firstly to promote fear and pity among their readers, which moves media product, and then later on, as the vaccine scare unfolds, to promote the idea that there are epidemics of infectious disease, which again shift media product. So I think that's the interest of the media, is really to sell itself. I think there's a big difference in the way media tells the vaccine story. There's a difference between the United Kingdom in particular, where there is no sense among journalists that they need to tell two sides of a story, and media perhaps in other parts of the world, particularly in the United States, where there is a tradition that one is supposed to tell both sides of the story. But of course, you could pick any story and you can put up against somebody of great integrity, great professional expertise. You could put up somebody else who's really little more than an amateur or a charlatan or a crank or whatever, and you can represent them as being somehow of similar stature. And I think that's something that journalists really have to be careful about, because just finding somebody who wants to hold forth on a view, and they may have some professional qualification, maybe a medical doctor, or they may have a PhD or something, does not of itself mean that what they're saying has any validity, or that they've really done any work, or they have any particular integrity. Well, in the 1980s and earlier in the 1970s, there was a tremendous concern around the world over the safety of the DTP vaccine, the diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis vaccine, where the whooping cough component was alleged to cause permanent brain damage in children. And what happened was that the media essentially said vaccines are causing brain damage. Then the media, journalists, discovered that this actually wasn't true, and they then declared that the vaccines had a clean bill of health, or they just moved on to something else. So in a sense, big media validated the scare in the first place and then moved on to discount the scare later on. Now we're in an entirely different situation where big media is really unable to massify audiences. Now we have such a proliferation of television channels, such a proliferation of different sources of information. It's not actually possible for any small group of journalists or individual television producers to shape the public agenda in the same way. Now we have very much a marketplace where individual consumers are able to be brought together with information providers who may have credibility, or maybe somebody sitting in their bedroom with some axe to grind, and it's very difficult for the public to know who they're listening to. So we've moved into a situation of previously of great paternalism, I think perhaps exemplified by the BBC in the United Kingdom, where experts would determine what the public debate was in accordance with what they perceive the public interest to be. Now we're in a situation where the public, the consumers, if you like, are voting with their feet, or in fact voting with their mouse.